God was not God, namely before he was created as a spirit. Well, in light of the problem classical theists have had with the issue of Christ's generation, this criticism suggests that they erroneously think Mormons believe Christ was somehow brought into self-existent consciousness at the time of his birth as a spirit being. But that's not the fact. We are as eternal as God in our intelligences. That's what the book of Abraham teaches. It's difficult, of course, to grasp the thoughts of God. And this is not just a simple discourse and rationale in the Scriptures. It's a bright new light, exactly like the sun is every day coming up from the east. Speculation on this, of course, is had, but we just simply don't know enough as of yet. But there's no reason to see the transition from intelligence to spirit as being fundamentally different in any way from the transition of a spirit undergoing a physical mortal birth. It's the same principle, you're just once again changing modes of existence. If incarnation in a physical body did not change Christ's immutable nature, and both we and the Christians accept that, we teach that, of course. It doesn't. Christ does not change. Then it would be reasonable to surmise that the same is true regarding his transition from an intelligence into a spirit form. This is based on the reasoning of the transition we know Christ has taken from a spirit to a body. Well, we say the same thing can be applied from going from an intelligence to a spirit child, the firstborn of the Father. Christ pre-existed both transitions. And since the Bible indicates that he is immutable despite his transition into mortality, then it follows that his transition into spirit form would be equally irrelevant to his immutability. In other words, it is reasonable to surmise that Jesus Christ has always maintained his same righteous character, even from an intelligence to a spirit body, and from a spirit body to a mortal, and through mortality through death, and into the resurrection, and becoming God again. All of this has nothing to do with the immutability of God. So Joseph Smith's teachings in the King Follett Discourse, 1, do not contradict the Bible, and 2, they do not contradict the Bible's doctrine of immutability of God in any way, shape, or form. That's fascinating to understand, isn't it? The Father did not change his righteous nature as a result of his changing modes of existence, any more than the Son did. Everything Jesus did, the Father did. Everything Jesus was, the Father was, as a separate, distinct person, a separate mode and center of consciousness. There are two, the Father and the Son. They have both undergone the same types of experiences. This is what the Bible teaches. This is what Joseph Smith taught. It's a strong doctrine. Very strong doctrine. And this leads us up into our idea of God and the infinite. We have to understand that the Greek philosophers, and a couple of centuries after Christ, the Christian apologists who adopted their Greek philosophy, their main tenet, their main teaching is that God is simply incomprehensible because he is infinite. He is just literally out of sight, so to speak. And God being infinite, so much larger, grander, greater, as a creator, than man, who is merely his creature, that there is a vast gulf between God and man, and that is an inseparable gulf. God, it will always be infinite, and man will always be finite. That was their assumption based upon Greek philosophy. Now, I'm going to use some great scholars to help remove the veil for you, because the veneer of Neoplatonic philosophy onto the Bible does not have to be the ultimate expression of reality. When we strip that veneer off and we read the Bible for what it says and for what it means, we get a completely different picture. And it's that picture of how is it possible for the infinite to coordinate, as it were, to work with, to embrace, to include the finite. How can the finite embrace the infinite? To philosophy, it can't. At least not to the early Greeks. But they didn't comprehend the principles, the themes, the vicissitudes, the properties, and the various philosophical aspects of the infinite that we now do, because they did not have their George Cantor, but we do. There is a new vision on the horizon concerning the infinite that is exquisitely fascinating in relation to the LDS theme of eternal progression and how God became God, and how it is beautifully biblical and absolutely logical. But the catch here, to introduce you into infinity for my series for next weekend. Well, next weekend's General Conference, so I'll probably, we'll see. I may be able to get a set of videos done before conference. I want to watch conference, but we will see how the rules, the limitations, the reasoning that we use for the finite is good and true based upon its logic within its realm of dialectic and discourse. But the rules, the definitions, the meanings, the interpretations, the overarching theme of dealing with the infinite is a different set of rules, truly. And the problem with showing contradictions between the Mormon concept of deity and eternal progression with the infinite is that the philosophers, the Christian philosophers who are arguing against this proposition, are using the rules of the finite to find contradictions when those rules approach the infinite. And that's a no-no. That doesn't work. So I'm going to separate, I'm going to clearly elaborate the principles of the finite and the infinite with you, and I'm going to show you how it is very important not to mix the two. You can't mix oil and water. You can't mix the rules of the infinite and the finite, even though you can put those two together. Make no mistake about it. And the scriptures absolutely do so. And I'll show you that with the next series of videos after this one.